I saw a, first it was really foggy, and it was actually like a highway, but it was covered in snow. It was foggy, and then it was covered in snow, and there was like a blizzard. And I saw Tim there standing on the side of the road, and he had like a backpack on, and he had in front of him, well, in back of him in the backpack, he had, it looked like to me, that very scroll that was opened up. And then in front of him, he had like a map, and it had like a light on it. It reminds me of like someone doing a reading on a thing, and then it's, you know, it's like long and
on a podium.
Yeah, and it had it on there. And in front of him was this map, and it looked very much like a Lord of the Rings map, that big one that had the places on it. But he had this other, and it was all on this paper, like this old time paper, like a scroll type paper. But he was looking over the map and everything, and then there was, I guess, a fresh piece of paper. I don't know, but it was obviously the old kind. And he had a pen, and he wrote the word "in between." And then I saw the two mountains that are actually the same mountain, but it was like the mountain where Jerusalem is in Zion. And this is where it's weird, but I saw on the Jerusalem or whatever, that mountain, there was this journey for the Ark of the Covenant to go on, and it started at the top, and it had these astronauts, like in the astronaut costumes. They were carrying it, but they planted it there, like they had a flag and they planted it there. And they like held it up with their backs, like they backed up against it and held it there. It obviously wasn't supposed to do that. And then I actually can't remember how they, because that was on the top, and then it started to go down. I think they walked it down the mountain, and then it actually started to walk on the words "in between." And as it's walking on the words "in between," something alien comes out of it. It tears out. And then after that, it changes who's carrying it, from whoever that was carrying it to like an old-fashioned like carriage, but like a royal carriage. And it was inside the carriage. And then as it got towards the end of the word "in between," it switched to, I've got to see how it came out. It might have come out. Yeah, it came out of that carriage being held by men, like on all four sides. And then it was set before the other mountain. And it opened, and out of that mountain came a woman. And she was old and weak, and she had like an umbrella, like she couldn't even like be in the sun. And she just was approaching the mountain, and there just was no way she was climbing up this thing. She's just too weak and old, and she just couldn't, frail, and she couldn't do it. And this vision started when Tim was talking, and I couldn't finish it until that point. And as soon as she stood there, and these steps kind of opened up onto the mountain, and it was right before Noah said the steps. And then it was clearly, in my understanding, I mean, he just began to continue to, after he said that, I just quieted myself and listened to what he was saying, because what he was saying was how that woman is going to ascend that mountain. And basically everything that was said here today is how that woman will ascend that mountain. And I don't think she's meant to be old and weak and frail.
Yeah.
I think that's just the state she's in at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think she's supposed to be. That was it.
She's a desolate woman in the Bible. So, Isaiah. Any thoughts? It's your vision.
It's my vision.
Yeah.
Well, there's a transition several times with what's carrying the ark, the astronauts, then the carriage, then men, and some outward influences related to the ark of God's presence, and not until it's properly placed again on the priests, the men, on their shoulders. Only then is, that's like the reinstatement of an order.
Oh, the path is open there.
And also the bride is revealed, but her condition needs to be changed. And that's kind of a present. Christianity is an old, decrepit, powerless, broken, weak person, fruitless, not capable, past age, and there's no way in that condition that she can ascend, even though God has, I think that the ark then is representative of apostolic ministry. It's a heavenly alignment that God has now brought back into position to enable the bride at that point to be transformed or renewed so that she can ascend. And I think that's similar to, there's a lot there, that also represents a company of people, the man-child, that have come to minister to the desolate woman in the wilderness, where the dragon has pursued her.
Oh, that's right.
And to make preparations. So even at the end of Revelation, you see that the bride has finally come to a place of preparation and adornment, where she can call upon her groom. So I think the early part of the dream is, maybe that's more representative of apostolic ministry, because you have an unsealed scroll. There are those in whom God has done this work. I wasn't going to go to this passage, but there are those in whom God has done this work, and they have not only the map ahead, it's like a blueprint, but they also get to observe what's happening. It's a very different perspective. So Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4, he essentially says this very thing. So then men ought to regard us, and he's talking about the apostles, not just the general believer. Men ought to regard us as servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the secret things of God. Now, it's required that those who have been given a trust, so that's God's entrustment to those who he set apart for a specific purpose, they must prove faithful. I care little if I'm judged by you or by any human court. So, whole different evaluation. Indeed, I don't even judge myself. Now, I like what he says here. He says, my conscience is clear, but that doesn't make me innocent. So he's not claiming self-righteousness or sinlessness. It is the Lord who judges me. So that means that's not putting judgment off. That's saying, I yield myself wholly to the judgment of God. See, when people say, well, God is my judge, that means get away from me, nobody can judge me. But what the apostle means is, I have given myself wholly over to God's judgment. That's a worse judgment than man. Or that's a more righteous judgment than man. My conscience is clear, that doesn't make me innocent. The Lord who judges me. Therefore judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait till the Lord comes. Wait till the Lord reveals his purpose.
Yes.
Something my dad says a lot. In due time, all things will become self-evident. What his heart is there is God's going to make it known.
Yeah.
And he will. That's the sentiment that the apostle has here is, be careful how you judge, because you may not yet know what God's really going to reveal in this. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of men's hearts. At that time, not now, at that time, each will receive his praise from God. What? How? You know, not because they were, you know, in some selfish way seeking something from God, but because they were faithful to their appointment. That's what he said earlier. Those who have been given a trust must prove faithful.
That's tough one.
That's a heavy burden. It's a heavy burden. But I think that's part of what's in the early part of the vision. And it's about an entrustment. And, you know, it's not just representing myself. I think in reality it represents a people. And that's going to be a part of the transformation that's taking place on the map of man's spiritual existence in the world. You know, what we also can see is that in this time, whether we can see it with our eyes or not, the mountain of the Lord is rising up. So we thought that the ultimate fulfillment is when the mountain rises up, but the king has not come and set his foot on it yet. Neither have the people ascended it. So there's a lot of different happenings going on there. And, you know, there's a movement from one to the other. I think the two mountains, one and the same, represent the coming together of God's purpose in times past and the fulfillment of God's purpose in times present and future. That's why they are one, because God's purpose hasn't changed. But what was forfeited before, it will now be renewed through the same order that God ordained, and then come to a fulfillment. Which, I mean, in the vision we don't even see the fulfillment yet. But Christ cannot come until he has made his enemy to be a footstool for his people. And the indication there is that his people are yet aged, weathered, and broken from a former way and need to be restored. But God has assigned or appointed or set apart a people in the same way that he did Christ. Now it will be through the remnant of Christ's body to see that new and living way open up again. So this is a reinstitution, a renewing of an ancient way. That ancient way being our very topic of discussion today. Discipleship, culture, relationship.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, we gotta say it again. Exciting. Obviously we're celebrating as well.